never thought betrayal could hit me this hard. 300,000 years of trust in my best friend, Jason. We'd grown up together, shared everything from our first cars to our darkest secrets. I never imagined that one day, the person I considered a brother would turn against me. It all started when I noticed unusual withdrawals in my joint account. At first, I brushed it off. Mistakes happen, right? But then I found an email, a draft he had forgotten to delete. The numbers jumped out at me. $300,000, and a plan that wasn't just reckless, it was deliberate. Before I could react, anger surged through me. How could he betray me like this? But amidst the shock, I realized something crucial. People who try to hide something often leave the tiniest clue, and that clue would be my weapon. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, stay with me. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's about the moment when the tables turn. I spent that night going through every document, every old bank statement, every overlooked email, and there it was, a pattern. One statement that Jason never thought I'd see. One detail that could expose everything. The next morning I confronted him casually. Pretending ignorance while knowing the truth gave me an unexpected calm. He laughed at first, confident he had covered his tracks. But I could feel the tension building. He didn't know that I had the upper hand. I needed to plan my move carefully. Revenge wasn't about acting in anger. It was about precision. And for the first time since I discovered the betrayal, I felt in control. The friend who had betrayed me was about to learn that nothing stays hidden forever. The days after I discovered Jason's plan were some of the longest I've ever endured. Every time I saw him, I had to force a smile, nod at his jokes, pretend like nothing was wrong. But inside, my mind raced. I couldn't let him think I suspected a thing, yet I had to act fast before he could cover his tracks. I went through every email, every bank record, every note I'd ever shared with him. That's when I found it, a small, almost insignificant line in an old account statement. At first glance, it looked like nothing, but I knew better. This tiny entry proved exactly what he had done, and more importantly, where the missing $300,000 had gone. I remember sitting back in my chair, heart pounding, staring at the numbers. It was like finding a hidden key in a locked room. I could feel a cold determination replacing the shock and anger. Jason had made a mistake, a massive one, and I was about to turn it against him. The next move required patience. I couldn't just confront him immediately. He would panic, cover up, maybe even deny it. No, I needed proof, leverage he couldn't dispute. I printed the statement, made copies, and stored the original safely. Every detail was documented, the amounts, the dates, the patterns, that only someone familiar with the accounts would notice. Then came the hardest part, staying close to him while pretending everything was normal. We met for coffee, joked about old times, and I let him talk freely about his plans. He bragged, unaware that I was quietly collecting evidence of his betrayal. Each word he spoke, each careless smile, reinforced the fact that he thought he was untouchable. Late one evening, I reviewed the statement again, and that's when it hit me. I didn't just have proof. I had the power to reclaim everything he thought he had stolen and more. Jason had assumed his betrayal would go unnoticed. But he had underestimated one thing: my patience, my resolve, and my understanding of the details he thought were invisible. I could almost hear the tension building in the room when the confrontation finally came. But for now, I stayed calm and waiting. I let him feel secure, letting his own arrogance become his weakness. The friend who had tried to ruin me had no idea that his actions were about to backfire completely. And when the time came, it wouldn't just be a confrontation. It would be a lesson he'd never forget. The day I decided to confront Jason, I felt a strange mixture of nerves and clarity. For years, he had been more than a friend. He was practically family. We had shared birthdays, vacations, even the kind of secrets you never tell anyone else. And yet, there it was, a $300,000 betrayal staring me in the face, hidden behind the smile of someone I trusted more than myself. I arrived at our usual coffee spot, the one we'd frequented for years, trying to keep my expression neutral. Jason waved, flashing that same overconfident grin. He didn't suspect a thing. Not yet. I took a seat across from him, the printed account statement tucked safely in my bag like a loaded weapon waiting to be drawn. "So how's business?" I asked casually, stirring my coffee. He chuckled. "Better than ever. Got a few deals lined up that are going to make me laugh all the way to the bank." I nodded, masking the storm of emotions building inside me. I listened as he spoke, every detail reinforcing what I already knew. The withdrawals, the transfers, the side accounts he had assumed I'd never notice. Everything pointed to one undeniable truth. He thought he was untouchable. He was wrong. After he finished talking, I leaned back, letting a moment of silence stretch between us. Silence has a way of making people nervous when they're guilty. I watched him fidget slightly, his smile faltering just enough for me to see the cracks in his confidence. "Jason," I began, my voice calm, controlled. "I've been reviewing some old accounts, and I noticed something interesting." He raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Oh yeah? What's that?" I pulled the statement from my bag and slid it across the table. "This. Every withdrawal, every transfer, it's all here. The $300,000 that suddenly disappeared. Funny, isn't it, how it all leaves a trail?" For the first time, I saw panic flicker in his eyes. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a pale, calculating fear. He leaned back, trying to play it off, but the tension was unmistakable. I don't know what you mean," he stammered. I let the words hang in the air, watching him squirm. "You think you could move that money without me noticing? That I wouldn't trace it? You underestimated me, Jason, and that's your mistake." He swallowed hard. "Michael, it's complicated." "Complicated?" I interrupted, my voice steady, sharper now. "You betrayed my trust. You lied about $350,000. That's not complicated, Jason. That's criminal in terms of friendship." He tried to argue, tried to charm, tried to convince me it wasn't as bad as it looked. But I wasn't listening. My eyes were locked on his, seeing the fear build with every passing second. The friend who had laughed in my face, thinking he was untouchable, was now exposed for exactly what he was: reckless, greedy, and utterly arrogant. I leaned forward. "Here's the thing, I don't need to report you. Not yet. But I do need to make sure this never happens again, and you're going to fix it." He swallowed again, beads of sweat forming at his hairline. "Fix it? How?" I smiled faintly. "You're going to return every dollar exactly as it was, and you're going to make sure I have complete access and transparency moving forward. No hidden transfers, no secrets, nothing. Or the statement you just saw. It goes to people who won't be as forgiving as me." He sat there, stunned, the weight of his own greed crushing him. He knew I had the evidence, and more importantly, he knew I had the patience and resolve to use it. "Michael, okay, you're right, I'll fix it," he muttered, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded calmly. "Good. That's the only way this ends well for you, and for us." It wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming my trust, my dignity, my control. Betrayal leaves scars, yes, but it also reveals the truth. And the truth? The truth is that those who assume they can hide their actions underestimate the ones they hurt most. Over the next week, Jason meticulously returned every dollar, providing a full account of every movement he had made. Every secret he had hoped I'd never see was now out in the open. And with each corrected transfer, I felt the weight of betrayal lift slightly, replaced by a cautious satisfaction. By the end, it wasn't just about the $300,000. It was about knowing that I had the power to protect myself, to turn the tables, and to demand accountability. Jason learned that loyalty isn't just a word, it's a responsibility. And when that responsibility is broken, there are consequences. Sitting in that same coffee shop a week later, Jason looked at me differently. Gone was the arrogance, replaced by respect, or perhaps fear. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The evidence had done all the talking. And I had reclaimed my peace, my money, and my sense of justice. Betrayal can strike anyone, but when it does, remember, the tiniest detail, the smallest overlooked record, can become your weapon. Jason thought he had it all figured out. He thought he could steal, lie, and get away with it. He was wrong. And as I walked out of that coffee shop that day, I realized something even more important. Trust is precious, patience is powerful, and justice, well, it always finds a way. After Jason returned every dollar, I thought the story was over. But betrayal has a way of leaving shadows, and I knew I wasn't done. Not until he understood the full weight of what he'd tried to do. $300,000 wasn't just money. It was trust, loyalty, years of friendship. And Jason had thought he could erase all of that with a few clever moves. I decided the next step was subtle but undeniable. I invited him to my office under the pretense of discussing a new business opportunity. He arrived confident, smiling, unaware that the tables were about to turn in ways he never imagined. "Michael, you've been busy," he said, shaking my hand. "Busy uncovering the truth," I replied casually, motioning for him to sit. He raised an eyebrow, clearly amused, thinking I meant the money. But I meant something more. I had spent the past few days not only documenting his betrayal, but also organizing a detailed timeline of every action he had taken, every secret he had tried to hide. It wasn't just about proving he was wrong. It was about making him understand that actions have consequences, especially when trust is involved. I slid the folder across the desk. "This is everything," I said. "Every transfer, every hidden account, every lie. I've laid it out in a way that even you can't deny." He glanced at it, then looked up at me, trying to maintain composure. "Michael, I've returned everything. Isn't that enough?" "Returning the money is one thing," I said, voice calm but cutting. "Understanding the damage you caused is another. You need to see the impact of your betrayal, not just the numbers." For the next hour, I walked him through every detail. Every sleepless night I spent questioning our friendship. Every moment of doubt I endured while wondering if he had truly been honest. And every emotional scar that comes from realizing that someone you love could turn on you so easily. By the time I finished, he was pale, speechless, and uncomfortably aware of the magnitude of his actions. No excuses, no charm, no lies could undo the evidence in front of him. Then I took it a step further. I had arranged a meeting with the accountant who had helped me organize the records. Watching Jason's face as the professional corroborated every single detail was priceless. His arrogance had evaporated. The friend who had laughed at me, thinking he could manipulate the situation, now sat quietly, absorbing the weight of his mistakes. I leaned back in my chair and allowed a small, satisfied smile. "This isn't about revenge," I said. "It's about accountability. You crossed a line, Jason. And lines like that can't be crossed without consequences." He nodded slowly, defeated. I understand," he whispered. The moment was heavy, but it was also empowering. I realized that exposing his betrayal, reclaiming my money, and making him face the truth wasn't just about justice. It was about reclaiming my own sense of power. Betrayal had tried to take everything from me, but I had turned it into my advantage. From that day forward, our dynamic changed. Jason was no longer the equal I had once trusted blindly. He had to rebuild trust, brick by brick, proving through actions, not words, that he could be reliable again. And I had learned a critical lesson. Vigilance, patience, and a keen eye for detail are the tools of anyone who refuses to be taken advantage of. Looking back, I realized that betrayal isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, hidden in numbers, documents, or overlooked details. But when you pay attention, when you refuse to let anger control your actions, you can transform the pain into power. That power isn't just about money. It's about knowing that you can face any treachery and come out on top, unshaken and composed. By the time Jason left my office, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. The $300,000 was back, yes, but more importantly, the balance of trust had been restored and the lesson had been delivered. I didn't need to shout or threaten. The evidence had done the talking, and he knew it. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, controlled, methodical, and that's when it hits the hardest. I watched him walk out, knowing that this experience had changed both of us. He had learned respect the hard way, and I had reclaimed my dignity without compromising my integrity. And as I sat alone in that office, reviewing the timeline one last time, I understood the final truth. Betrayal can test you, it can hurt you, but if handled correctly, it can also teach you something invaluable about patience, power, and justice. I thought the hardest part was over after confronting Jason and reclaiming the $300,000. But true closure didn't come from the money. It came from seeing him fully understand the consequences of his betrayal. In the days that followed, I watched him rebuild the trust he had shattered. Every email he sent, every detail he disclosed, every small action he took to prove he was accountable, reminded me that justice isn't always about punishment. It's about ensuring the person who betrayed you faces the truth of their actions. I scheduled one final meeting, not out of anger, but to cement the lesson. Jason arrived, wary but cooperative, aware that the tide had completely shifted. We sat down, and I spoke calmly, letting him absorb every word. "Jason," I said, "you've returned the money, acknowledged the betrayal, and shown some effort to make things right. That's the first step. But there's one thing you must understand. Trust, once broken, isn't easily rebuilt. It takes time, consistency, and honesty every single day." He nodded silently, his pride replaced by humility. For the first time, I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. Not the kind you fake when caught, but the kind that comes from realizing the magnitude of your actions. That day, I felt something shift within myself too. The anger that had fueled me when I first discovered the betrayal had transformed into clarity. I wasn't just reclaiming money, I was reclaiming my sense of security, my judgment, and my power. And the best part, I had done it without stooping to deceit or revenge out of rage. My patience, my attention to detail, and my refusal to act impulsively had ensured that justice was precise and final. I think back to the night I found the old account statement, the tiny overlooked detail that revealed everything. At that moment, I realized that betrayal often leaves breadcrumbs, and if you pay attention, if you act with intelligence and restraint, you can turn even the darkest situation into an opportunity for empowerment. In the weeks that followed, I implemented stricter financial safeguards, double-checking every account and documenting every transaction. I also reevaluated my friendships, understanding that trust is precious and must be earned, not assumed. Jason remained in my life, but the dynamic had changed. He was cautious, respectful, and aware that his past actions could never be undone. Reflecting on it all, I realized the ultimate lesson. Betrayal can feel devastating, but it doesn't have to define you. You can turn the situation into a demonstration of your strength, patience, and resilience. That's exactly what I did. If you've ever been betrayed by someone close, know this. The smallest overlooked detail, the tiniest piece of evidence, can be your lifeline. It can turn the tables, restore justice, and even help rebuild trust. But only if you stay calm, think strategically, and act decisively. Jason learned that lesson the hard way. I learned mine too. Trust Vigilance and patience are the most powerful tools you can have when facing deception. And when you combine those tools with clear evidence and controlled action, betrayal loses all its power. So, if you're watching this and wondering whether justice is possible when someone betrays you, take it from my experience. It is. But it doesn't come from anger or retaliation. It comes from foresight, control, and the courage to act when the moment is right. And while this story ends with me reclaiming what was mine, there's always another story, another betrayal, another opportunity to see justice served. If you want to hear the next shocking tale of trust broken, secrets revealed, and revenge executed with precision, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. It's a story that proves some betrayals are even darker than you could imagine. Remember, the moment someone underestimates you, the tables can turn. Patience, observation, and strategy aren't just tactics, they're your ultimate power. And in the end, justice isn't about winning over someone else. It's about reclaiming your own life, dignity, and peace. I walked away from that chapter stronger, wiser, and more vigilant. And Jason? He won't forget the day I discovered the statement that changed everything. Neither will I. Stay alert, stay patient, and never underestimate the power of a carefully executed plan. The next story I share might just inspire you to do the same.